Okay, we are recording live, and just want to apologize today that my co-host Devin, my son, he's actually an actor, so he's on a film shoot today, and he got called away to do a shoot, which is really good news. But unfortunately for us, we don't get Devin on our show today. So this is a really it's a really special this is a really special day, and it's the solstice. It's the summer solstice in the northern hemisphere here, and the southern solstice in the southern hemisphere, which is really cool. But also, it's National Indigenous Day as well. So a lot of really cool things coming together here today. So this is so I'm super stoked to have our guest on here. And so today, our guest is the Ocean Conservation Coordinator for the Canadian Parks and Wilderness Society, British Columbia chapter. And so I really want to welcome Carlo Acuna to Impact. We've been talking with these guys for quite a while to get them on the show, and we got them. So we're really stoked. And so, yeah, welcome, Carlo. We're really happy to have you on here today. This is going to be fantastic.
Oh, no, thank you, Nigel. Thanks for having us on.
Hey, no worries. I just want to mention that also that if you like what we're doing, we would really appreciate if you share and like and subscribe to our Impact podcast, because it means a lot. If we want to change the world, it takes each one of us just doing just a little bit. So just listening to these amazing stories that we have from all over the world of people that are really making a difference in our world and really making our world a better place for all life on our planet. Just have a listen and like it and share. And the more people that do that, the more change that we can make. This episode is sponsored by Surfrider Foundation, an amazing organization. Love these guys. They're dedicated to protecting the enjoyment of our world's oceans, waves, and beaches all around the planet. So they're incredible. The Marine Mammal Rescue Center at the Vancouver Aquarium, helping all the little baby orphan animals that get stranded around the British Columbia coastline here. And True Beach app, which is actually an app that our family created several years back to help share information about our beaches around the world and hopefully keep them clean. And the Ocean Legacy, helping stop plastic waste from entering our oceans. So that's a big one this week here in Canada because there was some new legislation that came down, I think, yesterday. So yeah, and so as I mentioned, this is a very special day. It's the summer solstice, and it's also National Indigenous Day. And what we'd like to do is acknowledge that we here, so I'm in North Vancouver, which is on the unceded ancestral territories of the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and the Musqueam nations. And Carlo, so where are you? Where are you today?
So I'm calling in from downtown east side of Vancouver. So also
nice.
The unceded and stolen territories of the Squamish, the Tsleil-Waututh, and the Musqueam peoples.
Wow, that's right. Yeah, we're on the same land here. This is fantastic. That's really cool. So what we do here is Devin and I usually do this thing we call Two Truths and a Lie. So we have a little bit of information about Carlo, and I'm going to read a couple of these truths or lies, and I'm gonna have to guess on my own because Dev's not here. So I'm going to guess which one is the lie. Okay, so Carlo, you ready for this? Let's
go for it.
Okay, here we go. So number one, Carlo has eaten seal meat and liked it. Okay, seal meat. Yeah, okay, I could kind of believe that. Okay, number two, Carlo has hit with an explosive bird poop in his mouth. I got a story about that. Okay, number three, even though Carlo is the Ocean Conservation Coordinator at CPAWS, he is afraid of being underwater. Oh, could be a lie, could not be. Another one here is Carlo loves comic books. All these ones are, some of them are on the edge, but some of them are, I believe. So I'm going to guess the lie. Okay, the lie would be the seal meat. I don't know. Yeah, I'm going to guess the lie.
Okay. So I guess I'll go through all of them because there's a little bit of a story behind all of them.
Sure.
So the last one you did was comic books, and yes. I am really into comic books. That was my big thing. outside, I guess, work and ocean stuff. So
Yeah.
I have quite a few. I have like nice library of comic books at home, and it's kind of like been a thing since I was a kid. So definitely comic books are my thing.
That's cool. That's really cool. Yeah.
Yes, and another truth is, yes, I am afraid of being underwater. So,
Oh, really?
even though, even though I have worked on the ocean for several years and talk about the ocean, being underwater just kind of freaks me out. I think it's just, I don't know. I guess it was a thing since I've been a kid. Every time I dunk my head underneath the water, I start to panic a bit, and still haven't gotten over it.
Wow.
One day I think I will. I've been told scuba diving and snorkeling are a really good way to get over that fear. So one day that will happen.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
definitely. I mean, some beautiful underwater. I'm a diver, so I was always I was always a little bit scared too. The vast, the abyss, right? It's the abyss underneath there and stuff. But once you get in there, it's really interesting. When you get underneath, you look around and go, "Oh, this is really cool." It's actually like being up top, but you're just down below and you're looking around. Is all it's absolutely incredible. But I know what you mean. I know that fear for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Anything about how about go ahead.
yeah. So yes, I have been hit with explosive bird poop. I guess here in Vancouver, and I guess pretty much all across North America, it's that kind of baby bird time of year, and I think a lot of people or maybe not a lot, but some people are aware that crows dive bomb
Yes,
people.
they are. Yeah.
When they're around, when people are around their babies.
Yeah.
And the thing is, gulls do that too. And so I was on the Farallon Islands in California, off the coast of San Francisco, about 30 miles out, studying seabirds and gulls.
Wow.
And they do kind of the same thing. They do not like people around their babies, and so they will also dive bomb you. And actually, the gulls, if on the Farallon Islands or around that San Francisco, kind of like Northern California area, if anyone has seen Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds,
yes, I've seen it.
Yeah. So the gulls are actually the inspiration for that movie because they are very, very aggressive. And so so besides pecking you or dive bombing you, they do kind of like peck you on the head. So the whole time we had to wear what do you call them, hard hats, so that we wouldn't get bloodied because they do have pretty heavy beaks. But another thing that they do is that they poop on you, and so most gull poop is just like that, that little splat that people see on their windshields and whatever. But this one time, I'm not quite sure what happened or how this gull did it, but this poop came out like a shotgun and it just covered the entire front of my body. And I have no idea how it happened. My whole jacket was just one giant gull poop. It was nuts. And so I have been hit with explosive bird poop. So
those islands are kind of a crazy place because they're covered in the birds, and I think down below it's probably one of the largest congregations of great white sharks. Also, right? Massive. Exactly. Great whites around that area.
Exactly. So there's a really cool thing that happens in that area with the currents that makes a lot of food. So there's a lot of wildlife there. So seabirds plus sharks. They just come at different times of the year.
Okay. Wow.
So the birds are in the summer, and then the great whites come around fall, I think.
In the fall, yeah. Wow. That's funny. My daughter just got back from a California surf trip, and she was surfing, not there, but she was surfing just south of San Francisco, all the way down. And I was down there a few years back, and I've always, it's out there 5 o'clock in the morning because that's the best time when it's really there's no wind, right? And you're sitting there, and I'm with all these local California guys, and I was just like, oh, this is kind of creepy because it's so still. And then there was a little kind of an upwelling by my foot, and I thought, oh my gosh, it's like this is shark territory, right? And it was a seal. It scared me to death. Oh man. Oh, so how about the
So
seal
that,
meat? Where
yeah,
were you and where did you
so
eat the
that
seal meat?
is the lie. So you were right. That's the
Ah,
lie.
okay, that's
So
the
I have
lie.
not eaten seal meat, but I have eaten whale meat. So
Right.
when I was doing field work in the northern tip of Alaska, the Inupiat there, every summer, I think,
Yeah.
around July-ish, they have their, or they had, I'm not quite sure what it's like now, but they had their annual kind of cultural, what's the whale called? Bowhead
Mhm.
whale hunt.
Oh yeah, the bowhead. Yep. Mhm.
Bowhead whale. So they're allowed to hunt a few each year, and it's
Right.
really really cool. And they share all the food with everybody there. So
Mm.
it's not just it's not just indigenous peoples in that area. There's actually a bunch of scientists doing work in the Arctic too, and they share it with pretty much everybody, which is really really cool. I thought they would they would save it for themselves, but no, everybody's allowed, and they gave us
Mhm.
a bunch of whale meat. And I thought that was really, really cool having them share their culture with us.
Yeah. Yeah, that is interesting. I think, I think I accidentally had eel. I accidentally had whale meat. I was in Japan a few years ago. My wife's
Mhm.
Japanese, and we went into a little restaurant, and then we had a assortment of sushi, right? Nigiri sushi on the rice, and yeah, there was I ate, and I'm like, oh, I've never had anything like that. And Reiko's like, yeah, that was whale meat, and I'm like, oh, you're kidding, and I was like, oh, but yeah, it was yeah, kind of accidental, but I've had it too. So
Cool.
yeah, yeah, very interesting texture and whatnot.
Yes, it
Um,
is.
yeah, yeah. So you with CPAWS here, your area, one of the concerns is the Great Bear Sea, right? That's the area that we were talking about the other day. Do you want to explain to our listeners where the Great Bear Sea is? I've actually got, while you're doing that, I'm going to put up, I do have a photograph of it here. If I
Okay,
can
cool.
share my screen for a second, but you can basically just tell. Um,
All right. So the Great Bear Sea. So for most people that don't know,
can you see that there? Did that come up for
yes,
you?
yes, I
There.
can.
Okay. So okay. Here we go.
Yeah. So the Great Bear Sea. So most people in British Columbia here, they know about an area called the Great Bear Rainforest, and that is an
Exactly.
area pretty much from, I guess, on the mainland side,
Mhm.
from I guess the Broughton Archipelago all the way up to the Alaskan border. And so that is a giant rainforest that is home to the spirit bear,
Right.
which is a white version of black bears.
Right.
And so,
So
um,
can you see my
oh,
little thing here?
yes,
Little
there you go.
so if I draw a line like this up, is this basically what the Great
Yeah,
Bear
exactly. That is
Rainforest
where
would
the
be?
Great Bear
Somewhere
Rainforest
in
is.
this area.
Exactly.
Okay, got it.
And then the Great Bear Rainforest is named after, or is named for that spirit bear.
Right.
But the ocean beside it is just as just as cool and special and important and in need of protection as the Great Bear Rainforest.
Right.
And so Canada likes to call it a really boring name, unfortunately. It's officially called the Northern Shelf Bioregion. So
Okay.
yeah, not exactly doesn't roll off the tip of your tongue very well.
Right.
So we wanted to connect it to the Great Bear Rainforest because there's really no
Mm.
distinction between land and ocean. Everything is connected. So
Right.
we thought we would call this area the Great Bear Sea. And
Great Bear
so it is
Sea.
the coast off the Great Bear Rainforest, but extends all the way like past Haida Gwaii.
So we're coming from, so we got the inland waters are on this side of Vancouver
Yes,
Island, and then we're on the outer side of Vancouver Island. We're heading all the way up past Haida Gwaii and then back
the
to the
Alaskan border,
mainland, the
exactly.
Alaskan border, right? And then all the way back down.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it is a giant area off
Mhm.
our coast. And what's really cool is that it kind of segues in or dovetails really well with Indigenous Awareness Month here in Canada and Indigenous Peoples Day,
Yes.
because Indigenous nations in this area are leading the movement or the process to actually protect the Great Bear Sea, which is really cool. And
Mhm.
that's what I wanted to talk to you about today.
Fantastic. And then inside the Great Bear Sea, we have these marine protected areas. Is that correct?
Yeah. So
And
I'm
there's
not quite
is there five or is there?
Okay, there's 3 of them. I'm not quite sure. Yeah, these purple blobs I don't think are marine protected areas, but there are already 3 marine protected areas in this region. There's the Scott Islands National Marine Wildlife Area, just on the northern tip of Vancouver Island.
Okay, let me see if I can find. You can keep talking. Let's see if I've got one here.
No worries. And then there is the, what do you call it? The Hecate Strait and Queen Charlotte Sound glass sponge reef marine protected areas. So those are 3 areas kind of in the middle of the Great Bear Sea, and they protect these cool things called glass sponge reefs, which are found nowhere else in the world than like pretty much mainly off the BC coast. And the cool thing about them is that when most people think of sponges, especially divers, you know that like, you know, those soft, squishy stuff.
Yeah.
But glass sponge reefs are totally different. Instead, they are hard, but really, really brittle. And so that, because their skeletons are actually made of glass, the silica, the same stuff that makes glass. And the thing is, these things can become huge. So they can be about 6 stories tall and maybe 100 kilometers in length. And so
did you say 100? Did you say 100 kilometers in length?
100 kilometers in length. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
They're really cool in the middle of the Great Bear Sea. But the only thing is they are deep down, thousands of meters below the ocean. So unfortunately, you can't dive to them in the Great Bear Sea, unfortunately. And then, of course, there is Guayhanas, National Marine Conservation Area Reserve and Haida Heritage Site. So that is at the southern tip.
So it's down here of Haida Gwaii. So this area here. Right.
Yes.
Okay.
So those are 3 marine protected areas that are already in the region. And what the Indigenous nations want to do is they want to create a network of marine protected areas all over the Great Bear Sea. So little small pockets of protected areas to better connect all those different habitats together, as well as cover more special habitats in that area, so that when all those marine protected areas work together, they better protect all the different habitats and all the different species in that ocean. So we're not protecting the whole Great Bear Sea, so that people can still fish and do transportation there. What they're doing is trying to protect special spots in that area, so that it can be restored. Because what the First Nations have told us is that for thousands of years, since time immemorial, the Great Bear Sea has pretty much sustained their societies and cultures, because their culture is very, very connected to the lands and the waters that they have been from. And so they've been sustained for pretty much thousands of years at populations probably 100 times greater than they are now. So it can feed a lot of people. But unfortunately, over the past few years, that number of wildlife and seafood has unfortunately dropped. So 2 big things were all the herring fisheries.
The herring,
in the Great Bear Sea. There used to be 3 of them, and they have all been closed down due to low numbers. And then just last year, 60% of the salmon fisheries were closed by the Fisheries and Oceans Canada, and a lot of those were in the Great Bear Sea region. So First Nations Indigenous nations and First Nations have been hit hard by that, because they depend on that food for food security. Their communities are really isolated up there. They can't, it's a little bit harder for them to go to the grocery store and get food. Because shipping up all that food to it's not that easy. So they can get a lot more food just from the ocean and the lands that they're on. But it's a little bit harder to feed themselves or have that food security, because unfortunately, biodiversity and seafood numbers have dropped. So that's what they're trying to do.
And Canada right now, I think I was reading that Canada is planning on protecting about 30% of its oceans or coastlines by 30 or 2030. So is that right? And that's where the MPAs come in. Like there's right now there's the 5, and I guess Canada, I guess I did know this, but Canada has the world's longest coastline, and about 10% of that is along the British Columbia coastline.
Yeah, exactly.
I never knew that. That's just that's fascinating. Absolutely incredible. But then inside there they have the 5 MPAs, but now Canada's talking about protecting 30% by 2030. So how do you feel? Like, are we on track for that, or how are
Yeah.
things looking? Yeah.
Yeah. So for those people that don't know,
Mm.
MPAs or marine protected areas, they are kind of like parks on the ocean.
Mhm.
So they're like geographic places with, strict borders, and then within those borders there are management rules and regulations that are designed for conservation, just like a park, but it's
Right.
in the middle of the ocean. And
Right.
so they, worldwide, they have been found to be one of the best ways to conserve marine life, because they don't just target one species like fisheries management does. Like, with salmon and stuff, he says, oh, you can't take this much, you can only take this much fish. What MPAs do is that they protect the entire habitat. So you're protecting potentially dozens or hundreds of species all at once,
Right.
with an MPA, which is really cool.
That is, I was watching your talk the other day, and what I thought was really interesting, and I've seen this in other areas around the world that have been overfished. I don't know where it was. There was somewhere in the South Pacific where some islands where everything was pretty much decimated, and then they got together and they protected this area. Absolutely no fishing for 10 years or whatnot, and it became so abundant that the spillover from the fish coming outside, then fishermen were able to fish. And that's what you're saying here, right? Is with the MPAs, if we protect these areas and totally protect them, then there'll be so much abundance in that area over not even that long, just a few years. Then the spillover on the outside of that, which there'll be a lot of it, you can fish.
Exactly.
Is that right? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, that is exactly. Yeah, you explained it better than I could. So excellent.
I don't know about that, but
yeah. So
interesting.
yeah, exactly. So that is why we want to protect the ocean, not just for nature, but for our economies as well. And so a lot of scientists have done studies on marine protected areas, and they have discovered that at least 30% of the ocean should be protected to help restore fisheries and wildlife, and possibly.
Yeah, so what they're saying, I think, is what you're saying there is that, so if the minimum is 30% that we need to protect, and if we do that by the year 2050, I think that's what they're saying, 20 or 2030, that we'll have enough, like we'll be able to regenerate everything that.
So hopefully, yes. So going forward, we'll be able to help regenerate that stuff. And so that's why Canada has that target of protecting 30% by 2030, so that we can what they like to call blue economy, restore wildlife plus fisheries, and get and make pretty much a whole bunch of coastal communities prosperous.
Right. Wow, that's amazing. And in that area there, I mean, right now, I mean, it's thriving. I saw your talk, and you mentioned the humpbacks. The humpback whales are very significant because they migrate from Hawaii, which a lot of us on the West Coast here have been to Hawaii, and we look and we see these beautiful, majestic, humpbacks, jumping and breaching and whatnot. But I didn't know that they actually come from Hawaii and they come across into the Great Bear Sea, and that's where I don't know if they're mating or they're I'm not sure. Or they're calving. But I did see, I think I mentioned to you, I saw an amazing film the other day called The Raven and the Whale, and it focuses on the humpback whales in that region. And they got up in the morning, they went out, and they counted like 35 humpbacks all sleeping, just kind of snoozing on the surface, right at the opening to, I think it's the Douglas Channel, the Douglas Inlet there. Cool. It was absolutely incredible. I had no idea that was there. And I've lived here all my life,
Yeah, it's really, really cool. It's just because the Great Bear Sea is obviously a northern area. And the cool thing about northern area or northern oceans is that colder waters, they're able to hold more oxygen than warmer water. Exactly. Yeah. So there's more food in colder waters. So the humpback whales, they calve in Hawaii as well as down in Mexico. And then during the spring and summer, they come up to the British Columbia region to feed, because there's so much food here.
Right, which is they mostly feed on herring. Is it the herring?
Yes, so herring is their big one.
Yeah, but our herring stocks are down. You mentioned, right?
Yes, earlier? Herring stocks are down. So what's been really cool, I don't know if you saw this, I don't know if this was in the film, I haven't watched it yet, but they do this thing called bubble net feeding, which
Yes,
is
I've
really,
seen
really
that.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah.
they kind of travel around, or they swim around in circles and blow bubbles and trap herring in their in these kind of like bubble nets, I guess you call them, and then
Yeah.
scoop them up. But we found, or scientists from the Marine Education and Research Center in Northern Vancouver Island, they have found another kind of weird technique that they're doing, and they're thinking it's because there's less herring, and they call this trap feeding. And what they do is the whales just kind of float kind of near the surface of the ocean and just open up their mouths, and fish
So
kind of take shelter from
and
seabirds. Yeah,
okay.
from seabirds, and so they all kind of congregate around the mouth. And then when and then sometimes they kind of do the sort of funny spin around, or they move their flippers to gather more fish into the mouth area. And then when there's enough fish, they gulp them down. And so that's a very new thing that those scientists have seen, and they're thinking that's because there's just not enough herring, maybe for to do bubble net feeding. So maybe they're trying something different to grab herring.
Wow. So it's unique to our northern coast here.
Totally unique to British Columbia, at least for humpback whales anyway.
Right. Then we go from the humpbacks and we go to the the orcas, and they feed, of course. I mean, the our resident orcas feed on salmon, where the transients feed on mammals like seals and stuff like that.
Exactly.
But on our salmon stocks, I know, because I know in the south here, our salmon stocks are way down, and our orcas are having a heck of a time. There's only 74 southern resident killer whales left in the wild, right? In the south here. In the north, I think they're doing much better because the salmon stocks are relatively good. I don't know if you can talk on the salmon stocks up
totally
there,
So yes, in the southern BC here, they're not doing that great, but in northern areas they are doing fine, or they are not doing fine. There have been a whole bunch of salmon closures there, but they're doing a lot better than they are here. And so the northern resident killer whales, a different population than the southern ones. They live more toward Alaska and northern BC. They also feed on salmon, but they seem to be doing fine, which is really good to see. So yeah, even though we are having salmon fishery closures, there's enough salmon for those northern residents, which is a good thing. And we're thinking it's just because colder waters up there, so more oxygen, more food for them, and they're also less susceptible to disease as well, because another thing that happens with salmon is in warmer waters, when they start going into the rivers, they're more susceptible to disease. The heat stresses them out, so they're more likely to get sick. And and people are guessing, maybe with colder waters, they're able to survive a little bit better in the north.
Right. And then down south here we have the dam system with the hydroelectric dams and whatnot, which are the salmon are having a tough time getting back to their spawning grounds in the north. I don't think it's as big. So what would be the I guess the greatest threats that you see for the Great Bear Sea? What's the kind of our environmental threats? I mean, we've got our global warming that's been happening. I mean, down here we had the heat dome here in BC last summer, and which was terrifying, actually, for over 40 degrees, which we've never had that I remember. And that's got to be affecting everything, salmon stocks, and we got the wildfires. But what's the what do you see are some of the greatest threats to the Great Bear Sea?
So some of the biggest things I think is, or the biggest thing I think is the biodiversity crisis. So a lot of people, like you said, they talk about the climate crisis and oceans warming, but there's another crisis called the biodiversity crisis, which I think is just as important, and that's where we're losing not just numbers of animals, but also species. So many species, a lot of species are unfortunately on the threat of going extinct. And then we're also losing different kinds of animals within those species. So I guess, like I was kind of mentioning before with the black bears, there is the white spirit bear. So that's a different kind of animal, but within the same species. And so we're losing all that biodiversity. And the thing with biodiversity is the planet, it kind of, for it to work properly and properly nourish us and give us all the things that we need, it kind of needs all its parts. So all the different species need to be there. And so it's kind of like a Lego set, if you can think about it. So you can remove some pieces and it's okay, but the more pieces you remove, the less stable it looks, or the weirder it looks, and so it's not working properly. And then there are some species, like salmon and herring, which are like what do you call them, keystone species, really, really important species that have an effect on a whole bunch of others, because they're food for a whole bunch of animals, from seabirds to whales to bears and wolves even. And so if you take out those really, really big keystone parts, then everything collapses. And so that's what we think, that's what I think anyway, the biggest threat to the Great Bear Sea is biodiversity. We just have to protect certain areas from fishing, so that we can restore those populations, have that spillover effect that you talked about, where more fish go into fishable areas, and that way, not only nature but humans can thrive in the future.
Right. And then and then I guess there's, I don't know about salmon farms and things like that. Also diseases getting out and affecting our wild salmon as well. There's all sorts of things. And I noticed in the film that I watched, the raven, the whale and the raven, whale and the raven was the actually is like traffic, is boat traffic affecting the whales, the orcas and the humpbacks, and the noise. And they had speakers. They have these labs that are up on in very remote areas where they have underwater listening devices, right? And you can hear the noise from the propellers of these freighters and all sorts, freighters, tankers, whatever they are, going by. And it's absolutely incredible. The underwater noise is deafening. It's absolutely deafening, and it's messing up the sonar communications between the whales and things like that too. So the increased traffic of vessels is another, I guess, another one. That's what I saw from the film anyway. Yeah,
exactly. So that is something that is another thing that marine protected areas could potentially address as well. And I know we're trying to do a whole bunch of stuff around Vancouver here with the port. So maybe that kind of maybe that will kind of spread to other areas too.
Yeah, because I know. I know we're not going to talk about pipelines and things here, but in the Vancouver area, I know that the shipping is going, multiplying, 3 times at least. And so the southern resident killer whales, you're going to have a heck of a time. They're already having a heck of a time, but with the increased freighter tanker traffic in and out of the Vancouver port and Seattle, it's again, it's just this threat that's really damaging the ecosystem and the symbiosis between all of these creatures. Like you said, like we talked about the herring, right? So the herring or we think, okay, they're little fish, but they're absolutely paramount to the survival of everything in the ecosystem, from the salmon to the orcas to the humpbacks to the wolves the wolves up the rivers, whatever it may be. Everything is connected. And I watched another, I'm addicted to Knowledge Network and all these amazing documentary films. There's so many good, amazing documentary films out these days. And there was one on trees, and I was watching. It was a 2-hour documentary on the importance of the trees and the symbiosis between the trees and everything. But the redwoods in California, the biggest trees on the planet, they're in danger. But the ocean thrives because the redwoods are there, because the redwoods give off something into the soil, and that flows down into the ocean, and hence you have these the kelp beds and the kelp beds and the redwoods symbiotically work together, and with one doesn't happen without the other. And so we're all so connected, and that's what we all really need to understand, is that we're so connected. Hey?
Yeah, and Indigenous nations and peoples have known that for thousands of years. One of their, I guess, sayings is that everything is connected, and that's one of the things they told us, is that the land is connected to the ocean. There's no difference. And that's why we kind of called it the Great Bear Sea again, because it is
Exactly.
connected to the Great Bear Rainforest.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I spent some time in the Amazon of Ecuador with my family several years ago with a group called the Pachamama Alliance, and we were with the Ashwar tribe. And what we learned is really interesting, fascinating stuff. They only had human contact about 10 years before we were there in 2010, so 10 years before that. So human contact and or outside contact, and they basically said is that they are the caretakers of the natural world, and they have been for millennia. We've been, our the Europeans, we've been over here for a couple of hundred years and we think we know everything, but the indigenous peoples of the world have been around for millennia, and they really are the natural caretakers of our natural world. And I think that that's what our world our world has to understand, that the knowledge that we're wiping out. And there's something that really scared me too, is that when COVID came through, COVID was wiping out elders, the older people. And in the indigenous communities, the elders are the wisdom keepers, the ones with the knowledge that has been passed down for millennia. And if we're wiping out, if the wisdom keepers, it's devastating on all of humanity. And yeah, so I mean, like you said, I think it's paramount that the indigenous cultures of the world and our West Coast here have a strategic part in managing this the MPAs and moving forward.
Yeah, we have a lot to learn from them. So it's really,
Yeah,
really
we
cool
do.
that Indigenous nations are leading this process and will be a key part in governing these marine protected areas when they're implemented. So that's really
Right.
cool.
Right. Yeah, I spent some time with my family last summer up in kind of Kispiox area, up north of Smithers, and and I just found that the indigenous cultures up there are very rich, and it's an incredible place. It's very, very rich, very, very deep. And we were fortunate to float the river for 4 days with a friend of mine who's a fly fishing guide, and the rivers were absolutely full of salmon. And we don't see that down here, and that's the way it should be down here,
Mhm.
but it's not. And up there, it's just the most beautiful thing. You can't move. There's so many salmon in the rivers. And my wife and I, when we were married in 1989, and we had our honeymoon in Haida Gwaii, and we camped on the beaches for a few weeks, and it was the same thing there. In Haida Gwaii, the rivers were full of salmon. And like you said, if we protect, was it 30%? If we protect 30% of our coastlines by 3030 or 3050 or whatever it is, it will have the ability to regenerate and be back to those days that I remember. And then back in the mid 80s, it was and it's gone downhill so quickly. But we can reverse it. We can
Yes.
reverse it if everybody does our part. And I have a really good friend that's a curandero in Peru, and he was doing a little thing because it's their solstice, there's their winter solstice down there, and we were celebrating a little bit last night. And he said something which is I think it's actually a northern indigenous tale, and it's about the hummingbird. And a hummingbird, there was a massive fire. There was a massive fire, and all of the animals in the woods were all running. They were all running away from the fire, and the hummingbird was just buzzing and staying and waiting. And then they were all leaving, and all the other animals are going, you need to leave. And the hummingbird would fly to the river, and he would stick his little beak in, he would pick up a drop of water, fly all the way back to this raging forest fire, drop his little drop in, and it would go psh, and he would fly back to the river, take one little drop, and he would do that. And the animals were looking up at him and say, what are you doing? What are you doing? And he looked down at them all and just said, I'm doing my part. And I think that's what all of us really need to do. Like, you guys are doing your part. I'm trying to do, my little part. But collectively together, if we all do our little part, we can totally change the world, and we can bring back all of the species that have, they're almost on the verge of extinction. They can be back into abundance and thriving in a very relatively short period of time if we all do our little part. So yeah, I just want to thank you guys for everything that you guys do. Yeah, is there anything, any other things you'd like to say there, Carlo?
Yeah,
Or
so just a
yeah,
couple
yeah,
last things. So
yeah,
yeah, even though we're kind of working with First Nations and then the federal
yeah,
and provincial governments to get this breed protected area network going, we do need a lot of public support.
right,
So the thing is, the public needs to let government officials know, let their MPAs, let their MLAs know, or not their MPAs, or their MPs and MLAs
yeah,
know that.
to help save the MPAs.
Yes, exactly. To help save the MPAs, exactly. That MPAs are important and that conservation is important. So we're hoping that around, I guess, around fall of this year,
Mhm.
there will be public consultations that will be happening. So whenever the government wants to input a marine protected area, they put out public consultations to the public to let people add in their thoughts, their ideas, their suggestions for protection. And so this fall, we'll need people to participate in those consultations and let the government know that protection is important. So if they do, if anybody listening out there right now, if they want to follow us at CPAWS-BC or on our website, we have a newsletter, and that will keep you up to date on any of the public consultations that will be happening in the Great Bear Sea, hopefully later this year. And we'll let you know, what how you can add in your ideas and suggestions. So yes, even though we're doing all this stuff, public is really important in making their voices heard as well. So just like that little hummingbird, everybody doing their part.
Right. Yeah, that's fantastic. And what we'll do is we'll put all the information that you mentioned in the description of our of the edition of the podcast here, of the episode, and so people can get hold of you and follow you and subscribe, and then and hopefully get out and do whatever they can. Take the kids down to the beach and do a little beach cleanup or whatever it is. Everything helps. And I just want to give a little shout out to my niece, Lucy Willis, who's heading out next weekend, I believe, up to Orca Lab for the whole summer, camping on the island, listening and documenting the activity of the northern resident killer whales, which is super cool. And and also, my daughter here, Kina here, who's helping out this summer with the marine mammal rescue down at the Vancouver Aquarium too. So all these, and I really find that the younger generations, the youth, are really switched on to helping our planet and making a difference and volunteering, and a lot more than my generation was. So I want to thank everybody, and I want to thank you guys so much for the mess that we created. Hopefully we can turn this thing around and have a abundant and thriving planet.
Oh yeah, sorry. I just want to mention one last thing, Nigel, if I can. So it's Indigenous Awareness Month. We also want to plug a film that CPAWS-BC helped produce. It's called Salmon Parks, and it is a film about First Nations on the west coast of Vancouver Island. And what they're trying to do is restore salmon populations to their territories, which is really cool. So what they're trying to do is protect the forests around the rivers and the coast. So if you can, we'll send you a link to that film as well. And if you can promote it, because
absolutely, we'll put it in the links.
Doing some great conservation work.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll put that in there too. So that's fabulous. That's great. Well, thank you so much, Carl. I really appreciate it, you being on Impact today, and for doing all that you do. And let's just keep it going. And and happy Indigenous National Indigenous Day here, and Indigenous Month, and happy solstice, and happy celebration.
Right. No, thank you, Nigel, for having us on and let us talk about our work here. So thank you very much.
Thank you.